This is why peace, justice, and democracy depend on ethnic studies. I'm Ezra Neeson, and I'm a certified instructor. My complete title is Certified Flight Instructor, which means I have the same background in education as every other certified teacher in America, but instead of training to teach classes of 25 or 30 students for a year, I train to teach individual students how to think objectively in life or death situations. There are a lot of other teachers in my family, and we've been talking about things going wrong with the education system for generations. Human psychology is the foundation of culture. You learn a lot about psychology, first in flight training and then in instructor certification. Pilot error is by far the leading cause of aviation accidents and deaths. Soon after I finished my instructor training, I found out about evolutionary psychology. This is a universal approach to psychology that builds up from human biology. A big part of that has been the study of how ideas develop and turn into cultures. Not just ethnic cultures, but also gender culture, religious culture, and any other group of people who have something in common. Also, on my dad's side of the family, both of my grandparents were white, but in the generation after mine, the majority of my relatives are Native Americans, and the rest are fairly evenly divided between whites and blacks. So, to cut a long story short, to a lot of white people, ethnic studies is just an abstract idea, but to me and to a lot of other people, it's real life. Democracy isn't just as simple as everyone going out and voting for stuff and the majority rules. That would just be a new way for majorities to dominate minorities. The idea behind democracy was peaceful diversity. People getting along with each other depends on everyone learning why their different groups have developed the different ideas they have. Now, Governor Brewer has banned ethnic studies from public schools in Arizona with HB2281. The law says that the ban only applies to ethnic studies classes that promote resentment by one group of people toward another, or that promote solidarity among a group of people instead of treating them like individuals. I don't like the wording of that one little bit. Who decides what promoting resentment or solidarity means? The study of the development of cultures and the histories of different groups of people in the United States is the study of groups of people who have come into conflict with each other. It's pretty obvious that some groups have won those conflicts and other groups lost. It's pretty hard to talk about what really happened in U.S. history without some groups of people feeling resentment about it and feeling solidarity with each other as a result. The U.S. government didn't conquer people at random and take their land. There was a definite pattern of taking land from a certain group of people. Today, there are Native Americans from over 500 different nations living within the borders of the United States. And they all have something really important in common with each other now as a result of decisions that were made by white people. Likewise for slavery. You can't teach about the history of slavery without promoting a sense of solidarity among some students, because there was a definite plan for who the slaves were going to be. One real problem with ethnic studies is that there are only so many hours in a day, so there are only so many things you can teach students. The Eurocentric version of history that ethnic studies classes conflict with does have the justification that it was the Europeans who conquered the world. World history turned out the way it did because of decisions made by Europeans. So what are you going to teach about everyone else? If you take up class time teaching students about people who made decisions that didn't affect world history, you'll have to sacrifice teaching them about something else. But if you don't teach students anything about the other people, you create the illusion that everyone else was just hanging out waiting for the Europeans to come conquer them. And that supports a lot of racist ideas that white people in the US have had from the very beginning. That's the point of evolutionary psychology. Evolutionary psychology is a science, but for most people it's easier to talk about as a philosophy because to most people it sounds like a philosophy. Really, any science is only science to people who can do the experiments. To everyone else, it's just a bunch of ideas that fit together, meaning a philosophy. So I can talk about it as a philosophy here, but just remember, this is the kind of philosophy that secular governments are founded on and that can be taught in public schools. If you want to follow evolutionary psychology all the way down to biochemistry, you can find out how that works in a book called The Selfish Gene by Richard Dawkins. Dr. Dawkins is a zoologist, so he shows how it works among animals. That's not what I'm here to talk about. Basically, Dr. Dawkins figured out how the survival and reproduction instincts work all the way down to chemistry. Your genes are the molecules that make you turn from a fertilized egg cell into a person, and they create your brain and sensory organs. The combination of your sensory organs and brain creates your perceptions of your situation. Your survival and reproductive instincts make up the deepest level of your subconsciousness, and the rest of your brain is for figuring out how to satisfy your instincts. Now we can say that all human behavior is the product of the attempt by the individual to maximize the survival rate of his or her genes by the most effective means perceivable to him or her. That's a pretty complicated way of saying it because there's a lot of complicated ways that works. A very thorough introduction to evolutionary psychology is called How the Mind Works by Steven Pinker. A simpler introduction is called The Stone Age Present by William Allman. An easier way to think of it is, everyone always makes the best decisions they can think of in their situation. And everyone's idea of the best decisions always means whatever they believe to be the most effective ways to keep their genes alive, but people can make mistakes, which includes misinterpreting their situation or being tricked by other people. There are a couple of other ways to look at it also, which work better in some situations and still lead to the same conclusions. One is the instinct for self-preservation. That's a good concept that combines survival and reproduction, provided that we make the distinction that self-preservation doesn't only apply to your own body, but to whatever you care about. You can sacrifice your life for something you care about if you cared about that thing more than you care about your life. Then we could say that what you did was the best expression of yourself that you could think of at the time. People sacrifice their lives for a lot of reasons, but nobody sacrifices their life for no reason at all. Another way to look at it is that your brain is what makes your body work. That means you need to know things like how to eat, but also when to eat and what to eat. Every part of your body, with a few exceptions like your tailbone and your appendix, helps to keep you alive and reproduce. The fact that people all over the world have the same body structure means we all have the same brain structure too. The selfish gene theory and evolutionary psychology are two gigantic discoveries. These are what scientists call first principles. A first principle is a law that has been proven to be universal. The selfish gene theory connected chemistry to biology, and evolutionary psychology connected biology to psychology. So now we can say that self-preservation is every bit as much an inescapable law as the law of gravity. As long as there are people in the world, people will always plan their lives around self-preservation. A tree grows toward the sunlight because that's how a living thing uses its body to get the things it needs in life. And isn't that what illegal immigration is too? Living things using their bodies to try to get what they need in life? That's how every human decision is made. That includes people like the Minutemen who go down to the border to guard it themselves. We can argue and argue about who's right and who's wrong, but that's not going to get us very far because everyone always believes their own side is right. The real question we should be asking is, who has a plan that's actually going to work? And this brings me to a much bigger conclusion. People all over the world have invented a lot of things. People in different parts of the world have invented things using whatever technological level they have and whatever resources they have to work with. But one way or another, everything people invent is an extension of something you can do with your body. A stone hammer is a way of hitting things harder than you can hit them with your fist, and so is a jackhammer. A pair of sandals is a way of increasing your ability to travel, and so is a space shuttle. A painting on a cave wall is a way of keeping track of information, and so is a computer. Face paint is a way of changing the way you look, and so is cosmetic surgery. It doesn't matter how much stuff you invent. Nobody can get out of this pattern because nobody's brains can figure out how. So no matter how strange of a thing you see someone else doing, one way or another, you do an equivalent to that in your life.